Hey everyone, and welcome. In the next few minutes, we're going to jump right into a really powerful skill, statistical thinking. We'll see how you can go from just having a bunch of raw data to making sharp, evidence-based decisions that can actually drive real results. So, let's get into it.
Okay, just imagine this for a second. Your company is sitting on data from millions of customers. Every transaction, every click, every interaction. It really feels like you're sitting on a gold mine, right? But you have no idea where to even start digging. This is a massive challenge for so many businesses. You have all this information, but no clear path to turn it into actual growth.
And this, right here, is where statistics comes in. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Statistics, boring math class flashbacks, right? Well, forget all that. Think of statistics as a super powerful flashlight. It helps you cut through all the noise and chaos, and it shows you the hidden patterns, the real stories, and the clear paths forward that are just buried deep inside your data.
So, let's talk about the real power of data. You know, it isn't just about collecting gigantic spreadsheets. The magic, the real magic, happens when you start asking the right questions. And to see exactly how this works, we're going to walk through a real-world case study from the very beginning to the final decision.
So, our playground for this explainer is the massive, and I mean massive, public data set of New York City taxi trips. We are talking about millions and millions of individual rides. Each one is a tiny little piece of a much, much bigger puzzle. It is the perfect place to go hunting for some real business insights.
Let's kick things off with what seems like a simple question, but one that is incredibly important for a business. Does the way a customer pay affect how much they spend? I mean, for a taxi company, the answer to this could be absolutely huge. It could change everything from their marketing all the way to the tech they decide to put in their cabs.
All right, time to put on our detective hats. We have our big question, and we have our mountain of data. Now we're going to follow the clues and see what the numbers actually have to tell us.
Okay, so our first tool is something called descriptive statistics. Honestly, think of this as taking a first look at a crime scene. We're not jumping to any big conclusions yet, we're just summarizing the basic facts to get a feel for what we're working with. You know, calculating some averages, making a few simple charts.
And boom, right away we find a major clue. When you look at the data, the difference is pretty clear. Card payments are averaging almost $18 a trip, while cash payments are just over $13. That's a pretty significant gap, more than $4 per ride. You can probably even start to guess why, right? Maybe card users are more likely to be business travelers on those longer, more expensive airport runs. But here's the thing. This is the exact moment where a good data analyst has to be a little skeptical. Is this difference really truly real, or could it just be a random fluke in the specific batch of data we happen to look at? I mean, what if we pulled a different set of trips and the numbers told a completely different story? We need to be sure.
To answer that question, we've got to level up our toolkit. We need to go from just describing our data to actually making inferences from it. And that's where inferential statistics comes in. It's what helps us figure out if the pattern we're seeing is a real trend or if it's just random noise. In other words, if it's statistically significant.
And that brings us to the moment of truth. We're about to put our initial finding on trial. We're going to use a formal statistical test to get a final, definitive verdict.
Honestly, the best way to understand this whole process is with a courtroom analogy. In any trial, the defendant is always presumed innocent until they're proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Well, hypothesis testing works the exact same way. We start off with a skeptical assumption.
So this gives us two competing claims. First, you have the null hypothesis. This is our presumption of innocence. It basically assumes there's no real difference, and that what we saw in the chart was just random noise. Then you have the alternative hypothesis. This is the challenger, and it's claiming that no, there is a real, significant difference here.
So our job as the data prosecutor is to dig through our data and see if we can find enough strong evidence to reject that initial presumption of innocence. We're looking for proof that's so strong it can overturn that initial skeptical verdict that there's no difference. So after running the test on our taxi data, this is what we get. This number, the p-value, is our key piece of evidence. It represents the probability of seeing a difference as big as the one we found, if the null hypothesis, the idea of no difference, were actually true.
And just look at how incredibly tiny that probability is. It is less than 0.01%. In statistics, we usually set a threshold, a line in the sand, at 5% or 0.05. Our p-value is so much smaller than that. The evidence is just overwhelming.
The chance that our result was just some random fluke is practically zero.
And that leads us to the final verdict. Based on the strength of this evidence, we can confidently reject the null hypothesis. The difference in the average fare between card and cash payments is real. It is statistically significant. Case closed.
Okay, now let's zoom back out. This wasn't just some fun little exercise about taxis. This whole case perfectly illustrates a powerful, repeatable framework that you can use to make smarter decisions in pretty much any field.
It all boils down to this simple four-step framework. 1. Ask a sharp, clear question. 2. Explore the data. Look for those initial clues. 3. Test your hypothesis. Get a rigorous verdict to confirm it's real. And 4, the most important step, make a decision. Act on that evidence, just like the taxi company might now start promoting card payments to boost their revenue.
And this is the real transformation. When you follow this process, you stop guessing and you start knowing. Data stops being this confusing, overwhelming mess, and instead it becomes your single most valuable strategic asset, guiding you toward much better outcomes.
So I'll just leave you with this one question. What stories are hiding inside your data? What crucial questions could you finally get an answer to? With the right framework, those answers are right there, just waiting for you to discover them.